Chapter 1 Rebirth of the Second Generation Rich Brother. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Small town, Kansas. A huge billboard looms over an endless cornfield, proclaiming, "Welcome to the creamed corn capital of the world." Above, a helicopter wobbles through the air, its downdraft creating swirling waves in the corn stalks below. Inside the small chopper, a blond man scans a newspaper. Suddenly, he lowers the paper, seemingly affected by the wind buffeting the aircraft. He glances at the two blond boys in the back. One, a cute, younger boy, calmly peels an apple with a pocket knife, a stark contrast to his nervous older brother, who sits with his eyes squeezed shut. The man's disapproval of his eldest son is obvious. Compared to his younger son, so precocious and bright, the older one is a real scaredy cat. He presses his lips into a thin line and snaps, "Lex, open your eyes." "But Dad, I'm scared." Young Lex Luthor bites his lip, which trembles slightly. Negative emotions from Lex Luthor +1. Congratulations. You have obtained 10,000 points of negative emotions from Lex Luthor. Redeeming 1 talent copy. The voice rings in the mind of the younger boy, Keno Luthor. He's a miserable, unemployed college grad from the 21st century, seemingly cursed by a fairy godmother. He choked to death on a Coke and woke up in the DC universe, as the younger brother of the future bald and ruthless Lex Luthor. One of the smartest people in the DC universe, a billionaire rivaling Bruce Wayne, a tech titan with the wealth of a small country. All the advantages of a high-caliber man rolled into one. As the little brother of the future Lex Luthor, born into mega wealth, Keno basically won the life lottery. Keno is also a realist. He's no genius, and he's not blessed with superpowers. A lazy bum's gotta be a lazy bum. So Keno's plan was simple: coast through life, eating and drinking on Easy Street. But the day after he learned to talk, a plug-in called System popped into his head. Basically, Keno's system collects negative emotions from superheroes and supervillains, which he can trade for talent copies, capped at 10,000 points per person. This offered Keno another path: copy the powers of the heroes and villains and become strong. Cheapskate bro is such a good guy. Keno felt a surge of emotion. Since his brother supplied all 10,000 points, it helps that they grew up battling for Daddy Luthor's attention, and that time when Keno left Lex to be dog food, going for that sweet bros before foes moment, Keno sacrificed his allowance and finally hit 10,000 points at age 5, enough for 1 talent copy. Snapping back to reality, Keno sighed and took his brother's little arm. "It's okay, Lex. I'm here." The small gesture seemed to bolster Lex. He slowly opened his eyes, a complicated look on his face. Growing up, he was always being compared to his younger brother. His parents would use even small things, like Keno bringing them breakfast, to attack Lex. Even though Lex got better grades, Keno crushed him in emotional intelligence. The only thing Lex had going for him was being the older brother. "Okay, knock it off. Look at the town below. Isn't it beautiful?" "Lionel, their dad," snapped, annoyed by the squabbling. Dad interrupted, and Lex squeezed Keno's hand, peering fearfully at the landscape below. Chimneys, smooth asphalt roads, tractors in the distance, the kind of stuff you just didn't see in the city. Lex perked up. "It is beautiful." Truth was, these views were a welcome change from the concrete jungle. The helicopter landed with a roar. Lex, who had been practically melting in his seat, suddenly had a burst of energy and hopped out first. He glanced back at Keno with a smug look, as if he'd won some great victory. "See? I got out of the helicopter before you." Kids' competitions are always so random. Keno ignored Lex's taunt and followed his father out of the helicopter. As soon as they stepped off, several factory workers swarmed Dad, ready for him to sign papers. More business. So boring, Lex pouted, then grabbed Keno, who was standing in a daze. He pointed to a nearby field. "Let's go look over there. I think I saw a big bird." Perched on a post at the edge of the field, a dark-feathered bird cocked its head, watching them. Keno sighed. "That's a raven, dummy. Stop being a know-it-all and come on." Lex grabbed Keno's arm, and the two little city slickers went chasing after the raven into the tall cornfield. Lex breathed in the smell of the earth. completely fascinated by everything about the countryside. "Wait, did you hear something?" Geno tilted his head. They were deep inside the cornfield. Tall stalks blocked their view. The darkness didn't help. Lex swallowed hard. "Good Geno, don't scare me," Geno sighed. "Listen closely, you big goof." Lex stopped and listened. "Help me. Please, help me," a faint whisper echoed around them, like a ghostly voice. What was that?" Lex squeezed Geno's arm again, his voice trembling. It sounded like it came from over there. Geno glanced to his right and started walking in that direction. "Wait. Don't go running off. What if it's a real ghost?" Lex called after him, worried about his little brother. Gritting his teeth, he hurried after Geno. They pushed through the damp earth and parted the corn stalks, finally finding the source of the sound. "Is that a person?" Lex asked, surprised. Tied to a wooden cross in the cornfield was a naked young man. A large S was painted on his chest in red paint. His black hair was wet with sweat and stuck to his face. When he saw them, his eyes lit up. "Please. Help me." Chapter 2 accompany you to watch the meteor shower. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Why is he tied to a cross? Let's get him down. They said it at the same time. Lex quickly grabbed Geno. "Hold on, Geno. What if this guy's a creep they tied to that thing?" Geno took a step, then moved beside Lex, standing in front of the guy. He pocketed his knife, staring at the young man. "All right, spill it. Why are you tied up here?" The man hung his head, his voice weak. "It's just bullying. High school graduation prank. They picked the least popular kid to be the scarecrow, all day and all night." The last words came out through gritted teeth. "A bullying ritual," Geno muttered. The guy in front of him was skinny and awkward, exactly the stereotype of a high school nerd. "Let's cut him down." Geno was about to slice the rope when Lex yelled, "Wait. Look at the sky." Geno looked up. Streaks of fire were blazing across the blue sky, headed towards the town with long tails. One was coming right for them, incredibly fast. The nerdy kid's face went white as the meteorite slammed into the field nearby. Boom! The impact sent Earth flying, a shockwave blasting out in every direction from the point of impact. Lex shoved Geno to the ground, throwing himself on top of him. "Down! Geno!" A second later, the shockwave slammed into Lex's back, burying them both. At the same time, meteorites were raining down all over town. Some crashed into the streets, causing explosions and screams, crushing cars and killing innocent people. Others smashed into homes, wiping out entire families. It was a catastrophe for the small town. 7 that evening, the setting sun streamed through the hospital window, falling across the white bed. Geno's eyes fluttered open. The air stank of disinfectant. He knew right away where he was. The hospital. Relief washed over him. At least he was alive, but then he thought of Lex. Sure, he always ragged on Lex for being a scaredy cat, but they were brothers, and family was family. Geno forced his eyelids open, looking around. He spotted Lex unconscious in the next bed. He glanced at the EKG, confirming his brother was alive. Geno breathed a sigh of relief. As long as he wasn't dead, even if he was a vegetable, Geno could save him if he had the time. But damn, feeling so powerless in the face of this, it sucks. Geno lifted his head, staring at the setting sun in the distance, his face grim. He thought of something in a card only he could see appeared in his hand. Having read the DC superhero origin story in his previous life, Geno knew what these meteors came from. Maybe he wasn't sure when he first came to this town, but the violent meteorite rain that affected the entire town made Geno sure that the future god on Earth, Clark Kent, had finally landed in this town. It's ironic that the arrival of a god among men is accompanied by destruction. Geno got out of bed and walked over to Lex, still in his hospital gown. Their savior was also lying in the next bed. Geno lightly slapped Lex's cheek, and his brother's eyes snapped open. "Ugh, where are we?" Lex opened his eyes, breathing hard, staring around in terror. He hadn't gotten over the meteorite strike. Geno slapped him again, a little harder this time. Snap out of it, Lex. We're in the hospital. We're safe. After Geno explained, Lex realized he was in a hospital bed. Damn it, Lex mumbled, glancing around the room. Where's Dad? Geno shrugged. Out making deals. Their father, Lionel Luthor, was a businessman through and through, a billionaire and one of the most successful entrepreneurs in America. Everyone kissed up to him. He spent all his time building his empire, and there was little time left for family. Yeah, he's never satisfied. Always wants more, like some greedy vampire. Anger flashed across Lex's face. His sons were in the hospital and all he cared about was business. Geno, you okay? Lex asked, deciding not to think about Lionel. Geno waved a hand. I'm fine. That kid on the cross is screwed, though. Geno pointed to the comatose kid. Even in the hospital gown, you could see the S painted on his chest, Lex sneered. Yeah, if it wasn't for him, maybe we wouldn't have gotten hit by those things. Just as Lex was about to say something else, the door opened and their father, Lionel, walked in. Seeing Geno and Lex awake, he visibly relaxed. Thank God, you're all right. Yeah, Dad, aside from waking up and realizing you weren't around, we're doing great, Lex replied sarcastically. He had no love for his dad, who loved money more than anything. Lionel frowned at Lex's tone. Don't blame me. I'm trying to build a fertilizer plant here. It could make the Luthor family a fortune. So how's that going, father? Geno quickly cut in. If Lex kept talking, their cheap dad would lose it. Lionel rubbed his forehead in annoyance. Fine, except there's one farmer outside of town who won't sell. That's why I'm here. I'm going to make them an offer they can't refuse. Geno's interest was piqued. Who's being so stubborn? Could it be the Kents? Lionel thought for a moment, frowning. They're called Jonathan and Martha Kent, I think. Geno wasn't surprised. Only Jonathan and Martha would turn down a fortune. Chapter 3 What's yours is mine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The black car sped down the country road, occasionally passing ambulances and fire trucks. The town, ravaged by the meteorite, was a scene of devastation. Today was clearly a disaster. Geno sat in the back, watching families flee town through the window. The car passed the flattened cornfield where he'd been before. The towering stalks had been crushed by the meteorite's impact. Even with the town in chaos, Lionel's greed couldn't be stopped. Seriously, why aren't we at the hospital instead of chasing after this vampire? Lex whined, acting like the spoiled brat he always was. Just minutes ago, when Lionel mentioned the Kents, Geno had insisted on coming along. Oh, come on, he bought you that fancy suit you're wearing, Geno pointed out, instantly sending Lex into another sulk. We're here, boss, the driver announced, parking smoothly in front of a rundown farm. Who'd live in a dump like this? Lex sneered, eyeing the dilapidated farmhouse. That's why I tell you to work hard, Lionel retorted, stepping out of the car. Geno silently followed suit. Ugh. I just stepped in bird poop. Lex, getting out, had the misfortune of landing in a puddle of droppings. Geno walked past, grinning. Lucky you, Lex. The farm was their target. The gate was chained, suggesting no one was home. This is a waste of time. A total bust. Lionel, the shrewd businessman, was already annoyed. He wrinkled his nose at the smell of poultry. Damn it, Lex. Get rid of those shoes. Stop tracking that crap around. Embarrassed, Lex ripped off his shoes and tossed them into the field, drawing further ire from his father in front of Geno. Mortified, he stomped back to the car. Dad, I think we've found the right family, Geno said, pointing to two figures in the distance. It was a young couple. The man looked simple and down-to-earth, the kind of honest guy you could spot in a crowd, radiating calm and reliability. His wife was saying something to him. He nodded, smiling, but his eyes betrayed his worry. She was a beautiful blonde, clutching a coat tightly to her chest. Something seemed to be hidden beneath, prompting her to keep glancing down. "Thank God," finally, Lionel muttered, heading toward the couple. He blocked their path, pulling out his checkbook. "Hello, I'm Lionel Luthor, chairman of Luthor Corp." Lionel waved the checkbook at Jonathan. "Let's cut to the chase. Name your price, and I'll make you an offer you can't refuse for this farm." "Wait, Martha and I." Jonathan started, but Lionel pulled him aside to haggle over the price. Lionel believed everything had a price. Martha watched Lionel negotiate with her husband, worried. Luthor Corp was a giant they couldn't afford to offend, and her husband's stubbornness might lead to a conflict with Lionel. Just as Martha was fretting, she felt a tug on her pants. Looking down, she saw a sweet little boy gazing up at her. "Pretty lady, what are you holding?" The clever Gino used his charm to full effect. Martha smiled down at the boy she'd found on the roadside. "It's my adopted baby." "A baby?" Gino's eyes widened. "Can I see him?" "Well." Martha hesitated, but Gino's pleading expression softened her. She knelt down, showing him the baby wrapped in swaddling clothes. "He's so cute." Gino gazed at the infant, noting his short black hair and peaceful sleeping face. The baby's pink and white skin would awaken any woman's maternal instincts. No wonder Martha was so protective of little Clark. "Can I touch his hair?" Martha pursed her lips. "Okay, but be gentle. He's sleeping." "Of course," Gino said seriously, pointing to Lex, who was glaring from the car. "I help my little brother go to sleep. I'm experienced with this stuff." Martha, glancing at Lex, who looked anything but like a younger brother, seemed relieved and carefully handed Clark to Gino. Gino stared at Clark, then extended 2 fingers. Invisible to everyone else, a card emitting golden light appeared between them. He slowly reached toward Clark, and the moment his index finger touched the baby's forehead, the golden card dissolved into golden dust, sprinkling over Clark's body. Contact with Clark Kent established. Talent copied. The system's cold voice echoed in his mind. Gino was confused. He didn't feel anything different, just calm, like breathing, except for the setting sun warming his skin, making him feel unusually comfortable. Is this system a scam? Gino wondered. He wanted to complain. Nearby, Jonathan and Lionel were having a heated argument. "I'm sorry, Lionel, I won't sell my farm for any amount of money. I love it here. It's a part of me." Lionel spun around, furious. "Fine. Be a stubborn idiot. Gino, let's go." Gino glanced at the angry Lionel, offered an apologetic smile to the worried Martha, and followed him back to the car. Once they were inside, Lionel ranted about Jonathan's stubbornness and stupidity. Gino, touching the knife in his pocket, wondered if he'd actually gained superpowers. If he had, why didn't he feel anything? Gino instinctively clenched his fist. Click, a sharp sound came from his pocket. He looked down to find the sharp fruit knife twisted into a mangled ball of scrap metal. Chapter 4 Return to the Town. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 13 years later, in a small Kansas town, freshly erected billboards, replacing those destroyed by meteorites, proclaimed, "Buttered corn capital of the world." Via room, a sports car roared past one of the signs, kicking up dust as it drifted around the bend. The engine screamed as the car sped through fields and crossed a creek, finally screeching to a halt in front of a sprawling, old castle. 2 young men emerged. The driver was a blonde, handsome with sharp features, hawk-like brown-black eyes, a strong nose, and thin lips. He was undeniably gorgeous, and the expensive suit amplified his appeal, making him look like a prince from the Middle Ages. Unfortunately, his princess in the passenger seat was a bald young man named Lex Luthor. He'd avoided baldness from the meteorite, but over a decade of intense study had cost Lex his hair. Gino tilted his head, gazing at the castle. "Wow, it really does look like a medieval castle, like you said. It reeks of history." Lex scoffed, "You mean it's old?" He waved to the butler, who'd been waiting at the door. A servant soon arrived to park the car. The butler, with a polite smile, opened the main door, welcoming the castle's owner. As they strolled along the tree-lined path, the fresh country air was invigorating. Lex glared at his blonde brother. "Congrats, you're exiled to Hicksville with me thanks to that vampire." Geno shrugged. "I just hope this place isn't haunted." Lex glanced at Geno's muscular build. He knew the terrifying power his brother possessed. If they encountered anything like a zombie, it'd be the monster running scared. "Come on, I've got a gift for you." Lex led Geno to the lawn behind the castle, where a silver-white sports car sat gleaming. Lex patted the hood. Bugatti EB110 Super Sport. Quad Turbo V12. Top speed of 216 miles per hour. Congratulations on officially starting high school. Lex tossed Geno the keys. "Seriously, Lex?" Geno reluctantly took the keys. "You don't actually agree with Dad's dumb idea of sending me to high school, do you? Education is important. And you should call me brother." Lex grinned, enjoying Geno's annoyed expression. He snapped his fingers. "Resist going to school, and I'll tell Mom everything. You don't want her flying in from the city, do you?" Geno imagined his mother's sweet voice as she reached to pinch his ear. He threw his hands up in surrender. "Okay, I'll go to school." Geno had an easygoing attitude. If you can't beat M, join M+. If he remembered correctly, Clark also went to high school in this town. Clark's high school years were rough. And he didn't need to worry about grades. Over the past 13 years, he'd learned that System S rules. The upper limit for points from a superhero or supervillain was 10,000. To get more items, he'd have to constantly find new targets. Lex was off to inspect the family's factory nearby. Before leaving, he told Geno to register at school today. "Oh, high school." Geno looked up at the blue sky, remembering his miserable high school experience in '96. Despite his best efforts, he barely scraped by with a college diploma. But that's all in the past. Geno smiled at the sun. The warm sunlight bathed his body, energizing him. He could feel his blood pumping. The incredible power within him was enough to shake the world. Geno slowly raised his powerful arm, feeling like it was made of steel alloy, and opened his palm. He squeezed gently, *bang, star. The force caused the air in his palm to explode with a sonic boom. "This time, I'm not wasting my life. I'm grabbing everything good." With a confident expression, Geno ripped off his black suit jacket, revealing a white shirt. He opened the car door and hopped in. High school life. He smiled to himself, the sound lost in the roar of the engine. "Here I come." The Bugatti tore out of the estate and sped towards town, driving with the wind whipping his hair. Geno thought about his abilities. 13 years since he copied Clark's talent. He'd found that the copied power, like the young Clark's, awakened gradually, steel-hard skin and super strength that could break a knife easily. "I wonder when I'll get heat vision." Geno steered the car onto a dirt road. Rounding another bend, a yellow school bus appeared. Geno realized he was on the same route as the bus. "Wait, that farm?" Geno frowned, looking at the property in the distance. Wasn't that the Kent's farm? That's where he'd copied Clark's talent as a kid. Just then, Geno saw someone come out of the red farmhouse. He carried a red canvas bag, had thick, black curly hair, and a tall, strong build. But his old jacket looked a bit worn. The figure stared at the distant school bus, looking dejected. "Received negative emotion from Clark Kent +1. Looks like I hit the jackpot." Geno glanced at Clark standing by the farm gate. The next second, he slammed on the brakes, the sports car stopping inches from Clark in a perfect drift. Geno pulled down his sunglasses, leaned out, and said, "Hey, need a ride?" Clark looked surprised to see the silver sports car and the cool blonde guy. Hello, but I don't think I need one." He was about to say he could run to school, but Geno cut him off. The young man shrugged dramatically. "Come on, you're a high school student, right? I'm going to register at this school today." Geno pointed to the disappearing school bus. "You want to walk the couple miles to school?" Chapter 5. Let me show you how cool you are. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The first time Clark met Gino went down like this. The guy in the driver's seat of the sports car had one hand on the door and the other tapping the steering wheel to the music. No time to waste, hop in, he told Clark, all attitude. We gotta catch that school bus. Clark sighed inwardly. He'd planned to superspeed his way to school, but this sports car kid had barged into his life. Something about Gino's words, mixed with that rebellious streak, got to him. Before he knew it, Clark was pulling open the passenger door and sliding inside. Who could resist a sports car? Especially a naive kid like Clark. That's the spirit, buckle up. Gino glanced over his shoulder, a cool smirk on his face. Things are about to get fast. He popped the clutch, shifted gears, and slammed the gas. The car roared, turning into a blur as it shot down the road, kicking up dirt as it chased the school bus. Gino steered with one hand, the sports car carving a perfect arc through the curves. Cool, right? He yelled over the wind. The roar of the engine and the rushing wind ignited something in Clark. Even he, who was usually so reserved, felt like cheering. He could easily outrun the car himself, but this was something else. He nodded, shouting back, "You're a great driver." It's nothing. Gino's expression was casual. They were already gaining on the bus. He grinned. Let's spice things up. He floored the accelerator, aiming straight for the bus's rear bumper. Wait. What are you doing? Clark's eyes widened as the car hurtled toward the bus. 300 feet, 200. The engine screamed, the chassis vibrated, and the tires whined on the asphalt. We're gonna crash. Clark gripped the door, ready to bail. Gino was clearly feeding off Clark's panic. Just as Clark was about to jump, Gino yanked the wheel and slammed on the emergency brake. The sports car swerved violently, nearly throwing Clark into the dashboard. He grabbed hold, watching as the car drifted past the school bus in a maneuver worthy of a pro racer. Tires screeched. The sports car passed the school bus with a swift, elegant drift, easily overtaking it. Lionel had hired the best racers in the world to train Gino since he was a child. The kid was good. On the bus, the driver's face was turning purple. He stared as the arrogant sports car drifted past him. A silent insult. He muttered under his breath, thinking that 20 years earlier, he could have been a racer himself. These young punks had no respect. Kids these days got no respect for their elders, he grumbled. The students were all shouting, but these kids were loving it. In the back, a black kid squinted at the passenger seat. Wait, Chloe, isn't that Clark in the passenger seat? What? The blonde girl, Chloe, one of Clark's few friends, bit her lip. She studied the familiar brown jacket and red backpack. Doesn't look like him. Shoot. Pete, the black kid, pouted. I didn't know our farm boy had a friend with a sports car. Never seen that dude at school. Chloe tossed her hair. He looks young, maybe a transfer student. Think I got a shot at asking him to prom? Peter shrugged. Didn't see his face, but if he's cute, you're out of luck. The cheerleaders will eat him alive. You're one of the school freaks, remember? If he's got money and looks, he'll be the new campus hero. He could get any girl to come over to his place to play poker. No girl would say no. Little Black Pete rubbed his cheek. If I was a girl, I'd be all over him. Outside, the sports car cruised smoothly. Gino gave the school bus a thumbs up, then hit the gas, leaving the driver fuming. Oh my God, you're insane. Clark pursed his lips, a sign he was really mad. That was totally irresponsible. You could have killed someone. Clark kept preaching. Gino, taking in all the negative energy, pretended to listen. He nodded. You're right. Won't do it again. Hearing Gino's words, Clark was taken aback and looked at Gino with some suspicion. When the boy took off his sunglasses, revealing sincere eyes, Clark decided to believe Gino. Maybe this new classmate was just a spoiled rich kid? Kind-hearted Clark always tried to see the best in people. Here we are. The sports car pulled into a parking spot outside the school. Geno killed the engine, patted Clark on the shoulder, pulled out a pack of gum, and offered him a piece. "Name's Geno Luthor. Nice to meet you." Clark took a piece of gum, surprised. "Luthor? From the chemical plant?" "Yup, unless there's another Luthor family in this town, that's me." Geno winked, extending his hand. Clark hesitated. Geno had been crazy, but no one got hurt. He shook Geno's hand. Clark Kent. Chapter 6: The Popular Transfer Student. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The school bus pulled up to the campus gate, and kids piled out, their eyes immediately drawn to the silver Bugatti parked nearby, surrounded by a sea of beat-up trucks. Geno's sports car was a total head-turner, but what really got the girls buzzing was the guy leaning against it, long blonde hair, tall, and seriously good-looking. Geno had his arm casually slung around shy Clark's shoulders, his smile cocky, his movements relaxed. The hint of abs under his white shirt sent the teenage girls into a frenzy, hearts racing, blood pressure through the roof. Years of sunshine and money had sculpted Geno into the ultimate heartthrob. Oozing confidence, Clark, never one for the spotlight, was momentarily overwhelmed by all the attention. With Geno's arm still around his neck like he was a puppet, they headed toward the school. "Feels pretty good, right?" Clark and Geno strolled into campus, heads down, but not missing the chance to peek at Lana Blue, who was also watching them. Even though this new kid was a little arrogant, on an American campus, hanging with the cool kids automatically makes you one of them. This new recognition definitely boosted young Clark's ego. He was feeling awesome. Across the way, Peter glanced at his friend Chloe, a hint of disappointment in his voice. "Guess my worst-case scenario came true. That sports car guy is hot." Chloe sighed and handed a $5 bill to little Nico. "You win the bet." She'd already seen a bunch of girls, clearly trying to look their best, walking past Geno and Clark, laughing a little too loud, hoping to catch the blonde's eye. "Looks like I'm out of luck," Chloe sighed, then quickly bounced back. "Hey, Pete, you think if we got him to join the school paper, we'd get more people to sign up?" Peter shot her a look. "Is that even a question? This new kid's already a star. The girls practically drool when they look at him. You should be figuring out how to get him on staff." Chloe nodded, already planning. Looking at the slightly shy Clark talking with Geno, she said, "Maybe we can ask Clark for help. The blonde seems to like him." And with that, Chloe went into action. "Hey, Clark." She ran up to the two boys, blocking their path. She glanced at Geno. "Didn't expect you to make friends so fast." Clark rubbed the back of his neck, embarrassed. "Hey, Chloe, this is Geno Luthor." Geno cut him off, smiling at the girl. They were practically acquaintances, after all. "Ah, the Luthors," Chloe said, with a knowing tone. "That explains the sports car." "Whoa, dude, you've got a Bugatti, little Nico," Pete said as he ran up and greeted Geno. "You're the new freshman, right?" Geno smiled and nodded. "Yep, my brother and I came to this small town from the city. Gotta say, this place is way better. The air in that damn city is terrible." In one sentence, Geno had won them over by complimenting their hometown. All three wore proud expressions. Meanwhile, not far away, Lana Blue was watching the scene unfold. Her eyes were fixed on Geno's face, a nagging feeling that she'd seen him somewhere before, maybe when she was a kid. "Lana, honey, what are you staring at?" Lana's boyfriend, Whitney, the tall, blonde captain of the football team, noticed her gaze. He followed her line of sight and saw Geno, sporting a cocky grin, chatting and laughing with the school nerds. Jealousy flared in Whitney's chest. It seemed like his girlfriend was interested in Geno. "Ha, that's the sports car kid from this morning. He's already famous," Whitney whispered in her ear, a sinister edge to his voice. "That maniac almost hit our bus." Whitney was laying it on thick, trying to sour her opinion of Geno. "Oh. Yeah, he's a little crazy." Lana snapped back to reality, smiling sweetly at her boyfriend. I just thought the transfer student looked a bit like someone I knew when I was little, but I must be mistaken. Let's go, class is starting, Lana said as she picked up her school bag and headed toward the classroom. Whitney, his face dark, glared at his girlfriend as she walked away, then shot a look at Gino, who was still watching Lana's retreating figure. The guy's arrogance rubbed Whitney the wrong way. Before even stepping on campus, he'd heard classmates saying this guy was a shoo-in for school president. As the former school president, Whitney wasn't thrilled. Combined with this new rivalry, Whitney felt a fire building inside him. Suddenly remembering the football team's finalized roster, a smirk crept onto Whitney's face. Just you wait, Blondie. That list is about to change. Gino, oblivious to being blacklisted by the former school kingpin, kept his eyes locked on Lana as she entered the classroom. Ever since stepping onto campus, he'd felt an odd vibe coming from her, like a fish out of water or a traveler with a bad cold. It made him uneasy. I need to figure out what's up with that girl, Gino thought to himself. Glancing at his watch, Gino said goodbye to his new friends. Alright, guys, I gotta report to the principal's office. See ya after class. Turning, he headed towards the main building. Gino found the principal's office. The vice principal of this small-town high school was a middle-aged Asian man. A small golden plaque on his desk read Mr. Guan. Hello, Mr. Gino Luthor. Mr. Guan stood up with a smile to greet Gino. Welcome to our high school. Gino smiled and nodded. I'm looking forward to it. Chapter 7 Threaten Me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jingle bell. The bell's echo filled the campus. In the hallway, a group of leggy girls stopped Keno. The white girl in the lead hiked up her shirt, flashing her flat stomach, and tilted her head, giving Keno a look. So, got anything going on tonight? Her two friends chimed in. We're having an awesome party. Yeah, you should come. Gino smiled at the girls, leaned in, playfully pinched the lead girl's cheek, and chuckled. Sorry, my brother and I have to clean up the castle tonight. We might be a little tied up. But when it's sparkling, I'll throw a castle bash and invite everyone. The girls were speechless for a beat, then squealed, You mean Luthor Castle? Is that your family's place? OMG, they were clearly blown away that Keno owned a castle. He's so smooth with the ladies, Chloe sighed in the hallway. With a face like that, no girl can resist. If it were you, it'd be considered harassment. Peter, ever practical, perked up. I'm just interested in the party. If he invites me, I'm gonna hit the buffet hard. What are you two talking about? Clark asked, suddenly appearing behind them. Holy crap. Chloe and Peter jumped. They spun around, glaring at Clark. What's the deal? Before they could say anything, Gino's voice startled them again from behind. Peter, doubly spooked, looked like he was about to cry. Why does everyone sneak up on people? Chloe recovered quickly and gave Clark a meaningful look, reminding him of their plan. Clark, remembering her help in class, scratched his head and said, Keno, you interested in joining the campus newspaper? Campus newspaper? Gino frowned, then grinned at Clark. Sure, why not? Sounds fun. Total BS, of course. The reborn Gino only cared about getting stronger and pursuing the girls who were the biggest challenge. He only agreed to score points with Clark. Chloe practically glowed with happiness. She hadn't expected the blonde transfer student to be so agreeable. Even Peter was surprised. Chloe cleared her throat, ready to butter Gino up, when his phone rang. Excuse me, gotta grab this, Gino said, raising an eyebrow and giving them an apologetic smile before walking away to answer. It was an unfamiliar number. He answered, and a slightly adolescent voice said, Hello, Gino Luthor. Jerome? Gino's incredible memory clicked. He remembered seeing him in the cornfield. Back then, he'd planned to save the unlucky guy, but then the meteor hit, and he had no choice but to leave Jerome hanging on the cross to face the bombardment. After that, he'd become a vegetable, lying in a coma in the hospital for over a decade. Glad you still remember me. But now it's payback time. The voice turned cold. Especially for leaving me to get clobbered by that meteorite. Jerome's voice was tight with anger. Gino frowned. You're blaming me? I wanted to save you, but I had to think about the situation. Gino's voice grew colder. I didn't think I should sacrifice myself to save you. He'd seen enough guys like Jerome, a classic moral blackmailer. If you don't help me, it's your fault. The guy didn't even consider that the Luthor family had footed the bill for his medical expenses during his coma. Trust me, you'll regret that, Jerome threatened, then hung up. Gino pocketed his phone, deep in thought. His sharp hearing picked up a whooshing sound behind him. Without even turning, Gino dodged, a fist brushed his clothes and slammed into the wall. What the hell are you doing? Gino stared expressionlessly at his attacker, a blonde kid in a red and white rugby uniform. The guy looked like an angry bear. Gino Luthor. Whitney slowly lowered his arm. His fist was throbbing, but he puffed out his chest and glared at Gino. I need you to do something for me. Go be this year's scarecrow. Gino crossed his arms. I'm not in the mood. Beat it before I change my mind. Some regular dude without superpowers thinking he can kidnap him and force him to be a scarecrow. It was as ridiculous as Lex getting yelled at by his dad for playing in chicken poop when he was a kid. Stop acting like a rich kid. Whitney sneered, stepping closer to Gino. By now, a crowd had gathered in the hallway. Hey, what's going on here? Clark pushed through the crowd to get to Gino, trying to intervene. Whitney, the muscle-bound football captain, stood tall, glanced at Clark and sneered, stay out of it, farm boy. He locked his eyes on Gino and yelled, I'm gonna teach you a lesson. He balled his fist and swung a haymaker right at Gino's pretty face. The crowd gasped. Everyone expected Gino's nose to be flattened. Clark instinctively stepped forward, ready to take the punch for Gino, but, to Clark's surprise, Gino was even faster. He grabbed Whitney's arm and snapped it with a quick twist. Crack! The sound of bone breaking was loud and clear. Whitney's forearm was fractured, the broken bones piercing his skin. It was a gruesome sight. The whole thing happened in a blink of an eye. Clark stared at Gino, his face a mixture of shock, surprise, and anger. He was shocked and surprised because this was the first time in years he'd met another superhuman, but he was angry at Gino's brutality toward Whitney. He'd just broken the guy's arm. Before Clark could react, Whitney screamed, "Oh, S******. My arm!" He stared at his twisted arm in horror. The pain was unbearable. He clutched his arm and collapsed to the ground, blood gushing from the wound and splattering on the floor. The onlookers were horrified, buzzing with shock. What just happened? Oh my God, what's going on? Chapter 8 with Clark. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the crowd's eyes, Whitney had just been punched by Gino out of nowhere, and then his arm snapped, blood gushing everywhere. Oh my God, is Gino some kind of demon? One student whispered, clearly spooked, but another girl quickly shot back, or maybe it's divine intervention. He's gorgeous, like an angel. God probably couldn't stand Whitney's behavior and smited him. The crowd buzzed, dissecting Gino's actions from every angle. After the whole drag racing thing, this new transfer student was giving everyone something else to talk about. Just then, Lana bulldozed her way through the crowd. She looked around at the blood and her boyfriend's mangled arm, and screamed, "Someone call an ambulance." She whirled around, glaring at Gino. Did you do this to him? The moment Lana appeared, both Gino and Clark paled, almost in unison. Thump, star, Clark hit the ground, out cold. Crap, Clark just fainted. Chloe and Peter rushed to his side, struggling to lift him. We need another ambulance. Gino's eyes flicked to the green necklace around Lana's neck. He scrambled backward, putting distance between himself and her, and the weakness that had been creeping through him vanished. Damn it, it's kryptonite. Gino cursed silently. His powers were developing, and even though he had super strength, speed, and a body like steel, he hadn't developed X-ray vision yet. It wasn't until now that he noticed the kryptonite hanging around Lana's neck. I didn't do anything, ma'am, Gino said, managing a charming smile despite his pallor. Maybe you should ask everyone what your boyfriend was planning to do to me. With that, Keno strode over to Chloe and helped her haul Clark to his feet. A small group helped the unconscious Clark out of the hallway. As Keno walked away from the commotion, he knew tonight was going to be a long one. What do we do? Rush him to the hospital? In a sports car? Chloe grunted, struggling to support Clark's weight. He weighs a ton. No need for a hospital, Keno said, taking a breath. He held up 3 fingers. 3, 2, 1. As the last word left his lips, Clark's eyes snapped open, and he gasped for air. Chloe and Peter looked like they'd seen a ghost, staring at Keno with newfound awe. Did he just predict the future? Clark rubbed his forehead, taking a moment to get his bearings. Then, he turned to Keno, his eyes filled with worry. We need to talk, Keno. Clark couldn't explain the jumble of emotions he was feeling: excitement, hesitation, confusion. The loneliness that had been his constant companion seemed to vanish in an instant. It was a feeling of belonging, like a wolf raised in captivity. It might learn to wag its tail like a dog, but its DNA never changes. Deep down, it's still a wolf, just pretending to be a dog. Keno shrugged. Sure. Just then, the wail of sirens echoed from outside the school gates. Ambulances and police cars were arriving. Keno gestured towards his Bugatti. But school's not exactly the place for a heart-to-heart. Follow me. Keno and Clark left the school, the silver Bugatti speeding away like a streak of light in the twilight, leaving a bewildered Chloe and Peter staring after them. Those two are kind of mysterious, right? On a concrete bridge just outside of town, the Bugatti was parked on the shoulder. Keno and Clark leaned against the railing, gazing at the lake below. The sunset cast a golden glow across the water, reflecting in their faces. Keno wasn't particularly concerned about revealing his secret to Clark. Clark wasn't just anyone, and he was destined to develop his X-ray vision. Sooner or later, he'd realize something was different about Keno. Better to take control of the situation. Keno figured Clark wouldn't breathe a word of it to anyone else. He understood Clark's loneliness, especially under the strict watch of his father, Jonathan. It was a loneliness that would only grow stronger. Just like during the Kryptonian invasion, Clark had desperately tried to connect with his people, humans, aliens. Everyone craves connection. A tense silence hung between them. Clark didn't know where to start. He wanted to ask Keno if he was like him, but he also disapproved of how easily Keno had broken Whitney's arm. What's on your mind, Clark? I'm heading back to the castle for steak later. Keno, Clark said, pursing his lips. You're not human either, are you? Keno. What was with this guy's assumptions? He was 100% human, just with a Kryptonian upgrade, but Keno got where Clark was coming from. He nodded slowly. No, Clark, you're right. I'm not exactly ordinary. I think it has something to do with that meteor shower we had 10 years ago. Ever since then, I've been developing some unusual abilities. Clark's heart skipped a beat. The meteor shower? That was the day he was born. You're not exactly normal either, right? Keno tilted his head, studying Clark. A hint of sadness flashed across the younger boy's face. No, I'm not. Not even a little bit normal. But I try to be. Clark straightened his shoulders, meeting Geno's gaze. If God gave us these powers, we should use them for good, not abuse them. Jonathan's teachings were coming through loud and clear. Clark had internalized the whole "with great power comes great responsibility" thing, but Keno just wagged a finger in front of Clark's face, his expression still flippant. Nah, Clark. I don't buy into that. Keno grinned, tilting his head to watch the sunset. Saving the world, being responsible, it's all way too much work. I have a very clear understanding of my powers, and I have a line I won't cross. I won't hurt innocent people. The breeze ruffled Geno's golden hair as the sun dipped below the horizon. His voice was calm but firm. But I will use these powers to protect myself, my family, and my friends. Anyone who messes with me is going to pay the price. Chapter 9 and Lex. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The sun dipped below the horizon, and moonlight bathed the earth. Geno and Clark's conversation ended on a sour note. Clark stood firm. With great power comes great responsibility, and those with superpowers should exercise restraint. Geno saw things differently. He wouldn't hurt innocents, but he'd take down anyone who threatened him without hesitation. Outside Smallville, a sports car screeched around the corner onto the road leading to Luthor Manor. The old housekeeper had been waiting. Geno tossed him the keys and headed into the mansion. Inside, crystal chandeliers illuminated the expansive living room. Lex was swirling a glass of wine, perched in a chair. He took a sip, a smug look on his face. Chateau Lafite. Pure bliss. Too bad you're underage. You can't touch this stuff. Geno settled into his seat, a sizzling steak in front of him. Rosemary sauce glistened on the surface, releasing an irresistible aroma. Wine doesn't bother me, Lex. Never liked it much. Geno shook his head, carving into the steak, savoring each bite. Oh, by the way, Jerome's awake. Lex's eyebrows shot up. He set down his glass. I was just about to tell you. This morning, Jerome, in the VIP ward at Metro General, woke up and vanished. The entire hospital lost power for about 30 seconds. Vanished? Geno frowned. You're saying he's got powers like me? Lex rested his chin in his hands and nodded. Looks that way. That meteor shower years ago created too many unknowns, and accidents. Like your unique talents. That's why we're back here, bro. Geno glanced at Lex's bald head. If we can crack the meteor mystery, maybe you can get your hair back. Lex's face darkened at Geno's jab. We agreed, no hair jokes. My bad, my bad. Geno grinned, hands up in mock surrender. When his brother got mad, he could sulk for days. Lex was, essentially, a brooding, disabled, and arrogant kid. But Jerome getting powers? That's new. Geno rubbed his chin, looking at Lex. Lex, be careful. I got a threat from Jerome at school today. A threat? Lex's face grew hard. He had a good idea what Jerome wanted. 13 years ago, huh? He thinks we left him for dead. Exactly. Geno nodded, shaking his head at Jerome's warped thinking. Excuse me, master. Sorry to interrupt. The old butler, Jarvis, in a tux, one hand behind his back, spoke with careful deference. But a group of police officers are here, requesting to speak with the young master. Lex shot to his feet. Questioning him, he stared at Geno. What happened? Did someone see you use your powers? Lex was already calculating who he'd need to pay off, or eliminate, to protect Geno. Geno shook his head. Nah, not really. I took down that bully so fast, no one saw a thing. They're just confused. Lex relaxed a little. As Geno's family, he knew what he was capable of, and that the world wasn't ready for superhumans. He turned to the butler. Tell them we're unavailable. As the scion of the powerful Luthor family, Lex didn't worry about blowing off the police. The old butler nodded and left, returning a moment later. As you wish, sir. They've left. In America, money talks. The small-town police wouldn't dare offend the Luthor Corporation, a major local employer. That was the power of capital. The police, frustrated, left Luthor Manor. They headed to Kent Farm, Clark's place. No polite requests here. 2 officers marched up to Jonathan's front door and pounded on it. Mr. Jonathan Kent. Smallville PD. We need your son to answer some questions. The family, gathered around the table, exchanged worried glances. Martha looked at Clark, a knot forming in her stomach. Jonathan signaled his wife to stay calm. He glanced at Clark, who looked a little nervous. He opened the door, blocking the police with his body. Officers, I'm Jonathan Kent. What's this about? The lead officer pulled out a notepad. Incident at Smallville High. The football captain's arm was inexplicably shattered during a fight. It's a career-ending injury. Eyewitnesses say there was a confrontation with the new transfer student, Geno Luthor. Your son tried to break it up and saw the whole thing. The officer's face was expressionless. We need to know what happened. Hearing this, and remembering his child's terrifying abilities, Jonathan's face darkened. He immediately assumed Clark had broken Whitney's arm. After all, only his son was capable of such a thing, but years of raising Clark made him believe he wasn't the kind to do that. For a moment, Jonathan was lost. Are you looking for me? Clark, drawn by the commotion, stepped up beside Jonathan, facing the officers. They looked him up and down. Yes, Clark. Can you tell us what happened to Whitney? Clark hesitated, meeting the officer's eyes. He caught the suspicious look from his father. Hurt flickered through him. He hadn't expected his own father to suspect him. He thought back to his conversation with Geno. A wolf disguising as a sheepdog is still a wolf. The words resonated within him. After a moment, Clark made up his mind. He raised his chin and looked at the police. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. Whitney's arm might have broken because of something strange. Chapter 10 Jenommy's Revenge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kent Farm. The two cops left the farm empty-handed after interviewing a bunch of people, but the results were pretty weak. Like Clark said, it felt like some kind of supernatural thing. Clark followed his dad, Jonathan, back into the house. What happened? Martha, Jonathan's wife and Clark's adoptive mom, looked at them both, worried. I heard the police talking about trouble at school. Clark, did you get into a fight? Clark shook his head. No, Mom, I didn't. But Jonathan jumped in. Then who broke Whitney's arm, Clark? I can see it in your eyes. As his son, Jonathan knew Clark's tells. And why are you hanging out with the Luthors? Jonathan rubbed his forehead, looking stressed. Those Luthors are all about themselves and can't be trusted. Jonathan. Martha gave her husband a look. You can't judge people you've never met. Actually, I have. Jonathan shook his head, his eyes fixed on Clark. I ran into Lana's aunt when I was in town this afternoon. She told me about the Luthor kid. She said he took you for a joyride and almost hit a school bus this morning. But he didn't, Dad. Keno knew what he was doing. Clark spoke up, almost without thinking. He'd seen Keno's lightning-fast reflexes. Avoiding the bus was nothing for him. Geno. Jonathan repeated the name. Your new friend's name is Geno Luthor, right? Jonathan shook his head, still looking stressed. But that kind of recklessness doesn't care about other people. That's crazy, Clark. I want you to stay away from that guy. Even without meeting him, Jonathan could tell that Keno didn't care about anyone else. He didn't want Clark becoming like that. Oh, so you always know best. Clark mumbled, looking annoyed, and started listing his dad's rules. Can't play football, can't run. Clark looked up, a little defiant. I'm trying to fit in, Dad, but now you're telling me who I can be friends with. Clark, that's not what I'm saying. Jonathan tried to explain, but Clark wasn't listening. He got up and headed for the stairs, leaving his dinner untouched. Jonathan. Martha put a hand on Jonathan's shoulder, her tone gentle but firm. You're being too hard on him. Jonathan sighed, looking troubled. I know, but I'm worried his powers will get out of control and the world will find out. Tuesday, early morning, Geno and Lex said goodbye. One went to high school, and the other was heading to inspect the Luthor chemical plant in town. Lex drove his bright blue sports car, speeding down a country road. The billboards and trees blurred past. Time for a smoke. Lex steered with one hand and reached into his pocket with the other, going for a cigarette to chill out. Bang! An explosion went off nearby. Lex looked up and saw a skinny kid standing in the road, giving him a creepy smile. Time to die, Lex. The kid raised his hands, electricity crackling all over his arms. Take this, he shouted, and a bolt of lightning as thick as a snake slammed into the car's tires. Bang, bang. The tires blew, and the sports car spun out of control, heading straight for the side of the road. Oh, crap, Lex fought the wheel, but the car was gone, smashing through the guardrail on the bridge. Whoa, the broken railing fell into the freezing river, taking the sports car with it. At the same time, Clark, speeding nearby, happened to be driving past. He saw a guy with lightning shooting from his hands blast a sports car into the lake, then take off. I have to save him. Clark stopped and dove into the lake without hesitating, swimming down, inside the car, dark, cold, and claustrophobic. That's what Lex felt. Water poured in through the cracks, turning the expensive sports car into a watery trap. Ugh, Lex swallowed lake water. He struggled to see but could only see a blurry mess. As he choked and gasped for air, Lex's vision faded, but he thought he saw a figure swimming towards him. Splash! Clark hit the water and swam like a torpedo to the car. He saw Lex passed out in the car, struggling for breath. Clark reached out, grabbed the roof, and ripped it open like it was paper, creating a big hole. Clark grabbed Lex by the collar and dragged him out of the lake. He laid Lex on the grass, checking for a pulse. It was weak, and Clark didn't have time to waste. He opened Lex's mouth and started CPR, just like his dad had taught him. Don't die, hang in there. Clark kept pumping Lex's chest and breathing into his mouth. Finally, Lex coughed up a huge mouthful of lake water and opened his eyes. Seeing Lex come around, Clark looked relieved. Cough! Lex coughed, staring up at Clark, his face young and innocent. Did you save me? Yeah, you looked like you needed help. I saw some weirdo attack you. Clark frowned, remembering what he'd seen. Yeah, it was a setup. Lex forced a smile, but he thought of what Keno had said the night before. Maybe the guy who attacked him was the one who disappeared and gotten powers recently. Geno himself, Smallville High School. In the hallway, Geno slung his backpack over his shoulder and walked, hands in his pockets, ignoring the stares from the other students. Beep. Keno answered his phone. Clark's voice came over the line. Keno, your brother went into the lake.